गोविंद बोलो गोपाल बोलो गोविंद जय जय गोपाल जय जय गोविंद जय जय गोपाल जय जय गोविंद जय जय गोपाल जय जय राधा रमण हरि गोविंद जय जय कण कण बोले राधे कृष्ण कण कण बोले राधे कृष्ण जय जय राम रमण हरि भजमन राधे गोविंदा भजमन राधे 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 गोविंदा.
We will start with our invocation prayers.
सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावतीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै. ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. गीता ध्यानम्. ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्धतामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी. नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्रा येन त्वया भारततल्यपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवैत्रेकपाणये ध्यानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः. सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दुग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्सः सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्. वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं. भीष्मद्रोणतटा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीलोत्पला शल्यग्राहवती कृपेण वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला. अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी सोत्तीर्णा खलु पाण्डवैरननडी कैवर्तककेशवा. पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थगन्धोत्कटं नानाज्ञानककेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाभूदितम्. लोके सज्जनषट्परैरहरः पीपीयमानं मुदा भूयात् भारतपङ्कजं कलिमला प्रध्वंसि न श्रेयसे मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्कयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम् यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुवन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदे गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुः सुरासुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः
Hari Om. So as we have seen before, every chapter in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita is presented as a yoga. In chapter 1, we saw the sorrow and the delusion of Arjuna that becomes a means for Arjuna to connect with Bhagavan, Sri Krishna. And because it becomes a means to connect with Bhagavan Sri Krishna, this same sorrow and delusion becomes a yoga for Arjuna. Arjuna Vishada Yoga. And one of the imports of Bhagavad Gita is that while Sri Krishna was in the present moment at that time teaching Bhagavad Gita and the learnings from the Upanishads to Arjuna, through Arjuna it is for all of us. And when we are in states where we find there is Vishada Yoga, or where there is delusion, where there is sorrow, or where we need any kind of coaching or mentoring or learning that we need to get, then we can always, each one of us, become an Arjuna and dwell into the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. And the first chapter, as we saw, is the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita, in the sense that it prepares the ground, it gives us the context of how this teaching came about. And in Sanskrit, the introduction chapter is called Upodghata Adhyaya. Adhyaya is chapter, Upodghata is introduction. From chapter 2 to chapter 18, Bhagavan gives the solution to Arjuna's problem. And essentially, he begins in chapter 2 by telling what he is going to reveal. He will list out, he kinds of plants the seed for the rest of the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 2. And then in the subsequent chapters, he proceeds to elaborate upon what he said he is going to talk about. And each of the following chapters will be an expansion of the seed that has been planted in the chapter 2. And of course, the final chapter, chapter 18, is a recap or a summary in the end of what Bhagavan has spoken about. So he recounts what he has said. The solution that Bhagavan gives, we will find, is very comprehensive. Even though chapter 2 itself, seemed quite comprehensive, each one of those concepts are expanded upon. And we will find that it not only is comprehensive, but it involves behavioral related aspects which come from Karma Yoga, the emotional aspects which come from Bhakti Yoga, and the intellectual aspects which come from Jnana Yoga. All of these are presented. Not only that, they are presented in the form of an analysis or Sankhya and in the form of action or yoga. So chapter 2 is Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya is a term that is derived from the word Sankhya. Sankhya, as I had mentioned to you earlier, is nothing but enumeration. And enumeration of what? Enumeration of the wisdom, or what leads to wisdom. The various aspects, the various teachings that lead to wisdom is what is enumerated. Essentially, the steps that lead to wisdom are enumerated in our Upanishads. And in that sense, Sankhya in this context is the Upanishad. And what is given by the Upanishad is Sankhya. What is given by the Sankhya is Sankhya. And in chapter 2, Bhagavan presents obtaining the state of steady wisdom as the method, which means he presents that obtaining the state of steady wisdom as yoga and a solution to the Arjuna problem. In addition to this, Bhagavan, we saw, actually gives Arjuna an instruction. He gives Arjuna the instruction to perform Karma Yoga. And he also distinguishes two aspects of Karma Yoga. The attainment of Atma Vidya and Swadharma Vidya, which he terms as Sankhya Yoga, and perfection of action, which he terms as Buddhi Yoga. This chapter, like we said, is essentially a summarization of the Bhagavad Gita in prospect, which is in anticipation of what is going to come. In Sanskrit, the term often used is Vastu Sangraha Adhyaya. Vastu means all points. Sangraha means bringing them together. Adhyaya, of course, is chapter. What is summarized in chapter 2? The complete wisdom that leads to Brahma Nirvana. Towards the end of the chapter, in the last verse, we saw Brahma Nirvana Mrichati. That is true identification, attainment of true identification and attainment of true happiness. Isha Brahmi Sthiti Partha Nainam Prapya Vimuhyati Stitva Syamanta Kalepi Brahma Nirvana Mrichati. And how is this wisdom obtained? Is sequenced out in a spiritual path. So basically, we just sat down and we took out the path that has been sequenced out. And this is the spiritual path that our scriptures recommend that we sadhakas or the seekers, we should follow. And we are encouraged to follow. We would notice that if you look at this path, and I had sent it to you in advance so that you can take a look at it before the satsang, all the points, all the stages that are covered, in fact, the entire path itself, every piece of it is actually touched upon in chapter 2. And Bhagavan covers each of those. And it would be interesting exercise for us to sit down and identify which verse pertains to which concept. So let's go through the spiritual path. And I like to call it the sweet design of cosmic order. It is the cosmic order, and it's a beautiful design. And if we undertake our journey along what has been designed, our life will be very fruitful. We have said this a multiple times, a number of times. It all starts with Karma Yoga. Essentially begins with Karma Yoga. And what is Karma Yoga? Karma Yoga is nothing but performing action, doing the karma with the right attitude. And the right attitude is doing whatever we do with Ishvara Arpana Buddhi, dedicating it to the Lord, dedicating it to the higher ideal, and receiving whatever comes our way as Prasada Buddhi, as his benevolence, and as the result of who we dedicated our action to. Whoever that we dedicated the action to, whatever we dedicated the action to, that is giving us the result. This attitude converts our karma to Karma Yoga. Now, action everybody does. We will see later in chapter 3 that actually people are helpless in doing action. Action everybody does. But how can we act intelligently? What is this term, intelligent action? Intelligent action is something whereby when we are acting, the performance in terms of our action, that becomes excellent. And when it becomes excellent, that excellent performances, one after the other, they bring about an unseen benefit. And that benefit is something that gives us that inner purity. Like the polishing of the wall, the story that I gave about the painter and the other spiritual guru who polished the wall to reflect the painter's painting. So this unseen benefit is polishing and purifying of our mind-intellect instrument. And with this purified mind-intellect instrument, we are able to proceed along the path. This is essentially the art of action or art of living is called Karma Yoga. And Karma Yoga leads to dexterity in action, which is Karmasu Kaushalam. And then the next step, the second step is Chitta Shuddhi. Chitta Shuddhi means removal of impurities that are there in the mind intellect. We saw that there are two types of impurities. Type 1 of impurities is impurities that makes us feel disturbed by what is happening in our environment. Our response or our reaction to what happens to us, or what is perpetuated to us from whatever is outside of us in the object world. The type 2 impurities are the impurities that are within us, that are essentially sullying our mind intellect instrument, and because of that we perpetuate outside that same impurity to the object world, to our environment. And we saw that the primary way these are made, the composition of the second type of impurities, are essentially the Shadripu or the imperfections of the mind. And these were Kama or desire, Krodha or anger, Lobha or greed, Moha or delusion, Madha or pride, and Matsarya or jealousy. We have gone through all this, so I'm not going to spend too much time on all of these. Chitta Shuddhi then leads to Samatvam or equipoise. Remember, we discussed the litmus test. The litmus test, the definite indicator to us that we have attained Chitta Shuddhi, is equipoise. When you see a person who is constantly maintains equanimity, you can say that that person has attained Chitta Shuddhi. Not the tamas, confusion with tamas equanimity. A person who is involved with the world, not tamasic and not involved, but while being involved maintains equanimity, goes through the extremities and maintains equanimity. That kind of a person, detached, involved person. The third step is Chatushtaya. Sadhana Chatushtaya is fourfold practice. And what is it? We saw that the first one was Viveka, which is nothing but discriminating between the Nitya and the Anitya, the permanent and the ephemeral. The second is Vairagya, which is dispassion towards the impermanent, what is not there forever. The third is Sham Adi Shatka Sampatti. Sham and some other elements, which are totally 6. And those are Shama, which is control of the mind, Dama, which is control of the senses, Uparama, which is willingness to give up distractions that will keep coming even if there is control of the mind and senses. We saw that earlier in chapter 2. Even for the controlled mind, the mind is going to run away. And how do you control that? That is Uparama, the willingness to give up distractions. Titiksha or forbearance. Even if you control your mind, senses and give up distraction, things will happen. And how are we able to bear it? The fortitude or forbearance, the patience, the endurance. Shraddha, which is dedication and faith, and Samadhana, which is ability to focus. And the fourth of the Sadhana Chatushtaya is Mumukshutva, which is desiring only for the ultimate true happiness. Desire only for liberation. Desire only for Tattva Jnana. That is Mumukshutva. And Sadhana Chatushtaya leads to one being an adhikari or one being qualified. It is like when you have an MBBS degree, you are allowed to practice as a doctor. So that qualification comes from Sadhana Chatushtaya. The next step is Guru Upasadana. Guru Upasadana is nothing but reaching the Guru and seeking direction, like Arjuna did. Shishyasteham shadimam tvam prapannam. He asks Bhagavan. That is Guru Upasadana. So once, I was sitting in this lecture and Javed Akhtar was there, and he said, this is quote unquote, Javed Akhtar quoted, he said, any belief that is devoid of logic, reason, rationale, evidence or witness, that is faith. And I was sitting there and wondering, what is he talking? Then there won't be any faith in anyone, any belief in anyone. And if you are going to be without faith or without belief, where is Guru Upasadana? Then as I kept thinking while I came back home, I kind of twisted it was his quote, I just rearranged the words. And that made a lot more sense to me. And that went something like, any belief where logic, reason, rationale, evidence, witness are inherently present, that is faith. So this makes a lot more sense, especially when one is in this spiritual pursuit, because spiritual pursuit requires a lot of faith. Guru Upasadana then leads to Shravana, which is listening and receiving, importing information, and Manana, which is asking questions, seeking clarity, debating, and so on. Even arguing is Manana. Our scriptures give the authority to students to argue with the Guru when you don't agree with something. And the next step is Nididhyasana. Nididhyasana is meditation or contemplation. And the clarity that emerges from Nididhyasana helps a person to focus and to immerse. Focus is concentrating the mind to a single point, Chitta Ekagrata. And immersion is nothing but sannyasa. Without that immersion, perfection cannot be attained. Oftentimes we think sannyasa is something, which is totally giving up on everything, renunciation. That is not entirely true. But immersing in something so that you are able to get that perfection, immersing in the subject matter, that is essentially sannyasa. A person who immerses completely is a sannyasi. That gives the person complete focus, complete dedication, ekagrata. And Nididhyasana then leads to clarity of thought, which is nothing but samabuddhi. The next step is Vividisha Sannyasa. Vividisha Sannyasa means immersion to know. Vividisha means the desire to know. Vetum Ichha Iti Vividisha. The desire to know is Vividisha. And sannyasa, like we have seen earlier, means also implies to give up. So when one has the focus, when one has the immersion, and one has the desire to know, desire to get that knowledge, when all these three are present, what happens? Then one gives up the distractions that come. So if I want to be a really good tennis player, I will practice a lot. And when I'm practicing, I'm going in the morning at 6 a.m., I'm giving up on my sleep. If I go again in the evening, I give up on my recreation. So when you give up distractions to immerse deeply, to focus even more, that is called Vividisha Sannyasa. Even I experienced this, when I was, one of the things that I used to do other than my work, pretty much addicted to either tablet gaming or watching a lot of these quote unquote Netflix or Amazon Prime and all of those things. Reasonable, I was not too addicted, but quite a bit, yes. But what I found was that now that I have to sit down, I have to start writing my notes, and I love it. And because of that, those things have taken a back seat. I wouldn't say that I don't play a tablet game at all, but it has gone down like probably 90%. So when you love something and when you immerse yourself in an activity that you love, that gives you that intellectual satisfaction, then you give up something else which you would have otherwise been indulging in. And that giving up, that renunciation, that leaving the lower to attain the higher, as per your definition of what is lower and higher. Oftentimes we start thinking and debating within ourselves about what is lower and what is higher. If you are pursuing, if you are a sadhaka, you define for yourself what is lower and what is higher. And as per that, when you give up something lower to attain something which is higher, that renunciation is called sannyasa. And this renunciation then enables the person to have total, complete, non-stop, dedicated pursuit. I will repeat this again. Total, complete, non-stop, dedicated pursuit. And any excellent performance requires these elements, requires this kind of a pursuit. Vividisha Sannyasa leads to avidya nivritti. Avidya means ignorance, nivritti means removal, removal of ignorance, and vidyananda prapti, gaining of wisdom. The next step is tattva jnana, is nothing but realization of the truth. When you realize the truth, what happens? The seeking stage comes to an end and the searching stage starts. So you are no longer that sadhaka. A person who has got tattva jnana is no longer the seeker or no longer the sadhaka, because that person already possesses that knowledge. If I lose my car key, I already possess my car and my car key. So I have to search for it. So when a person gets to a stage where you have Tattva Jnana, the seeking stops and the searching begins. And with this realization of that truth, with this knowledge or with the wisdom, automatically comes a sense of humility. You will find that the greatest cricket player, Virat Kohli, is not arrogant about his game. He may be arrogant about the competition. There may be a physical show while he's playing, because like war, competitive sports requires aggression. But normally if you see him, he's a soft guy. So that humility comes in automatically. Real knowledge leads to the realization that we are very small. We are a tiny speck in this amazing, awesome, mammoth creation. We are nothing. One of my experiences, whenever I travel to the Himalayas, I'm doing these treks. When I'm saying Himalayas, I don't mean Shimla. When you go beyond, when you go deep into the Himalayas, and that you have the mountain, in front of you, massive. And then you are like, you feel that you are such a small element in this creation. If you are in an empty beach and you see that vast ocean in front of you, massive water, you feel like you're such a small speck in that creation. And Tattva Jnana then leads to bhakti, or absolute devotion. Once there was a young boy who saw his mother was working. And what was she working on? With a cloth, a thread and a needle. And he asked her, what was she doing? What are you doing, Amma? And she said she was making an embroidery. The boy didn't understand what an embroidery is. So he says, what is this? He asked her what that was. And she said, let me embroider it for you, pun intended. Because embroider means elaborating, giving information or knowledge. So in this context that we are talking, embroider, So she said, I am creating this beautiful design in this nice cloth with these colorful threads. And the boy is looking at her, and he sees this cloth, which is, securely bound by this wooden ring. If you see these embroidery works, in the handiwork they do, it's firmly secure. Like we are secure in this creation. And it is securely bound there. But all he is able to see is a jumble of colors, a jumble of threads, which is pretty chaotic, which is pretty, it's like a mess. And he tells his mother, Amma, what are you talking? Are you saying this is a beautiful design? All I see is a mess out there. And then the mother turns the cloth and the boy sees this intricate, beautiful, lovely, flowery design, which is a systematic pattern, which is made with a systematic pattern. So oftentimes when we look from things from our narrow perspective, then what happens is we see everything as a problem. We see everything as a complicated mess. But when we extract ourselves from our narrow perspective and when we see it in the light of common knowledge, in the light of the bigger knowledge, ultimately, of course, Tattva Jnana, but till we get to Tattva Jnana in the light of the bigger knowledge. When we get there, then things make a lot of sense. We see a beautiful, wonderfully created pattern which makes logical sense, which makes emotional sense in the bigger picture of life. So Tattva Jnana then leads to Samadhi. Samadhi is what? Samadhi is immersion in that knowledge, immersion in that wisdom, and in that devotion. We find this in the life history of every sannyasi. Whether you see a successful, excelling sportsman, a musician, an artist, a literary writer, a poet, whichever field you look at it, scientific explorations, people who are indulging in scientific explorations, all of these, you can see, that there is this immersion to the exclusion of other activities. In fact, people who explore space or astronauts who go out there and spend 6 months, 1 year and beyond, they have actually left the earth and they've gone there completely to the exclusion of it. That is their level of interest. In fact, a lot of people will find very scared to go to space. Forget about going to space. People feel scared to do skydiving from the airplane. When you go to the airplane and when you're thinking and people tell you, can you skydive? It's something that takes just freedom. I wouldn't call it courage. It just takes freedom to take that plunge, to take that jump. Imagine going to space. When you are going to space, you're so passionate about what you're doing that you're willing to leave this planet Earth, which is where you spent all your life up till now. So leaving it to the exclusion of what you would otherwise be doing, you immerse yourself. And that absolute focus, that absolute concentration, dedication, those are nothing but a byproduct of love. This samadhi then leads to Atma Tripti, which means self-delight. Tripti is delight. Atma Rathi. Rathi is satisfaction, self-satisfaction, finding satisfaction within yourself. And Atma Santushti, self-contentment. Actually, some of these times when you're doing this, you start thinking of the verse itself. So it's a beautiful exercise to connect the verse. So Atman Yevatmana Tushtaha, finding that satisfaction within yourself. That then leads to Aparoksha Jnana. The next step is Aparoksha Jnana. Aparoksha Jnana is direct experienced wisdom. Paroksha is hearsay or something that we have read about, information that we have got from other sources. Aparoksha is what we have experienced ourselves. My eyes, my sense organs, my wisdom, my mind and intellect, what I experience through these faculties which are mine. Remember, I'm saying I and mine. That is Aparoksha Jnana or direct experienced wisdom. One of these examples that I keep giving is the tennis games, and I love watching these rallies when Federer and Nadal are, it's like playing these rallies. It's like a music concert. Up and down, beautiful shots. Each one of them is something to be relished. And sometimes it goes on for 10, 15, 20 minutes. And both players are completely immersed in it. Completely, 100% immersed. And then one of them wins the point, they come out, the next one starts. There's no break, there's no nothing, there's no distraction. The next point starts. The next point could be a longer point than the first one. Remember why I take this example of Federer and Nadal is they are experts in their game. They have the complete knowledge. In this world of tennis, there's nobody else who is them. So they are the epitome of knowledge in tennis. When a person who has reached that epitome of knowledge in tennis already got it. So will the person get bored because he already has got it or she already has got it? Not really in these kind of examples, right? In fact, in these kind of examples, the more better you become, the more epitome you reach, you get deeper and immerse deeper into it. So that kind of getting absorbed in your own wisdom and getting thoughtless. When these two guys are playing, they are not thinking of anything else, completely thoughtless. In that experience, that is getting deeper and deeper into samadhi, which is nothing but this Aparoksha Jnana leads to nirvedam or dispassion, wherein when you lose a point, it doesn't matter. When you win a point, it doesn't matter. And it leads to samadhi abhyasa, which is the next step. The 10th step of the spiritual path is samadhi abhyasa, deeper meditation, deeper contemplation. One of my other favorites, Viktor Frankl, who was a survivor in the Germany concentration camp, he said, meditation is about a survivor in a concentration camp. The kind of things that were done to him, he could have just died. People who got lesser tortured have died. But he survived. You know why he survived? In his own words, because he was able to delineate, detach himself from the body, mind, and intellect. The pain was being meted out to his body, mind, and intellect, essentially to his body, but he detached himself from it. And that then enabled him to think about and say that meditation is about accepting the challenge to change ourselves and transforming our habits of interpretation. By learning to understand and focus on what is real and go beyond our conditioned view of reality and experience the subtler truths of our existence. In this process, we become more connected to what really is. What a beautiful quotation. Any remaining impurity, any remaining kama, krodha, lobha, mada, matsarya, any of those that are remaining, they are completely removed. While doing karma yoga, a lot of this gets removed, but some may remain. And even if those are remain in samadhi abhyasa, it is completely eradicated. And samadhi abhyasa then leads to ashubha vasana nivriti, which means removal of negative tendencies, and shubha vasana prapti, which is gaining of positive tendencies. The next step then is vidvat sannyasa. We talked about vividisha sannyasa. This is vidvat sannyasa. Vidvat is a person who already knows, means a knower. The renunciation of the knower is vidvat sannyasa. Immersion after knowing. Sannyasa is focus, letting go, absorption. One of my favorite examples is Sri Ramana Maharishi, a Mahatma. You know, he had this aparoksha jnana, direct experience of the Brahman. And oftentimes when he was either teaching or giving lectures, he used to relapse into his direct experience, the memory of that direct experience. And his mind will go deep into what he has experienced himself. And in those states, he suddenly disconnects with the audience. And either the words stop coming out, he becomes completely silent, or sometimes he's saying something which is not understood by the people who are there. May be connected, may not be connected, but definitely not understood. And then he comes back after a few minutes and then continues as if nothing had happened. That kind of immersion, that is Brahmanubhuti, Anubhuti of the Brahman that you have experienced. And when that Brahmanubhuti happens, then what happens is it leads to Vasana Nivriti or complete purgation of the tendencies. The next step is Jivan Mukti, which is liberation while living. And that Jivan Mukti, while you are living, if you are liberated, what does it mean? That means that you are connected to the inner divinity. Like we had talked about in one of the first initial sessions, every creation is divine in the inside. Deep inside, there is divinity. Deep inside, there is happiness. So we don't have to go out seeking happiness outside. We have to search inside and find it. That inner exploration, that is what is the finding the self, discovering the self. And that Jivan Mukta, he has or she has attained Paramash Purushartha, which is the original goal or the ultimate goal of all human beings, attaining that deep happiness that touches the core and everlasting, long-lasting happiness that can remain forever. Whatever actions we do for that, to become happy. And that Jivan Mukta has got it, has attained it. The Jivan Mukta is described in various ways by our scriptures. One of them is Sthita Prajna. We talked a lot about the Sthita Prajna in chapter 2, a person of steady wisdom. The other person Jivan Mukta is referred to as Bhagavad Bhakta, devotee of the Supreme Lord. We'll come to that, chapter 12 onwards. Then also referred to as Guna Atita, which means someone who is beyond the three gunas, Traigunya Vishaya Veda, Nistraigunya Bhavaguna. Someone who is Nistraigunya, that person, beyond the three gunas. And also referred to as Brahmana. We talked about it earlier. One who has realized the self. In fact, in some context, even the seeker is also referred to as Brahmana. The next step is Brahma Nirvana or Yogam, which Bhagavan talks about in chapter 2 also. Through identification, realization. This person is in this state of ultimate, pure, long-lasting, deep happiness as long as the body remains. And once the body perishes, the person attains Videha Mukti. Videha Mukti means is liberated from procuring another body. This may be difficult for some of us to understand, some of us to believe or agree with. In which case we can stop at Jivan Mukta, which of course we all relate to because all of us are pursuing that ultimate happiness. But if we believe and if we understand the concept of continued life, then Videha Mukti is the ultimate state, the end of this pursuit of the spiritual path. The culmination of the spiritual path is Videha Mukti. So moving on, I kind of represented this graphically. We'll just revise this once using that graphical representation or figurative representation. We'll just revise this once. Just a quick note. As you all know, I am also a co-learner, co-seeker with all of you. This representation is something that I put up myself. So if something is wrong here, if you have access to some bigger book or a text which shows that some of this is wrong, please pardon me and let me know so that I can correct this. But this is from whatever I have read, I put this representative path together. We'll do a quick revision. And we will also, once we finish that, associate which chapter connects to which part of the path that we are talking about. So as we all know, Karma Yoga is the start of the process in terms of the spiritual path. Karma Yoga leads to, so I have basically used the terminology of each of these steps leading to something and that then resulting in the next step. So every step we take, we all anticipate that there should be something that comes out of it. That is what each of these steps leads to. What comes out of following the step. And when you follow the step, it leads to something. What is the result of that will be the next step. So we will go through that. Karma Yoga leads to Karmasu Kaushalam. Yoga Karmasu Kaushalam, which is nothing but dexterity in action. And that dexterity in action or that Karmasu Kaushalam results in Chitta Shuddhi. Chitta Shuddhi then leads to Samatvam or equanimity. Samatvam results in Sadhana Chatushtaya. Sadhana Chatushtaya leads to Adhikari or qualification, and that results in Guru Upasadana. Guru Upasadana leads to Shravana and Manana, listening and discussing, clarifying. And then that results in Nididhyasana. Nididhyasana leads to Samabuddhi, clarity of thought. And Samabuddhi results in Vividisha Sannyasa. Vividisha Sannyasa leads to Avidya Nivriti or removal of ignorance and Vidyananda Prapti or attainment of wisdom. And that then results in Tattva Jnana. Tattva Jnana leads to Bhakti or absolute devotion, which then results in Samadhi or immersion. Samadhi or immersion leads to Atma Tripti, Atma Rathi, Atma Santushti. Delighting in the self, satisfied in the self, contented in the self. And that then results in Aparoksha Jnana. Aparoksha Jnana leads to Nirvedam or dispassion. And Nirvedam results in Samadhi Abhyasa. Samadhi Abhyasa leads to Ashubha Vasana Nivriti or removal of negative tendencies and Shubha Vasana Prapti or gaining of pure positive tendencies, which then results in Vidvat Sannyasa. Vidvat Sannyasa leads to Vasana Nivriti or purgation, eradication of tendencies. And that then results in Jivan Mukti. Jivan Mukti leads to Paramapurushartha, attainment of deep and everlasting happiness. And that results in Brahma, Nirvana or Yogam, which then leads to Satvika Shraddha, pure dedication, pure faith, uncontaminated faith. And Satvika Shraddha results in Videha Mukti. So quickly going back, we saw that chapter 1 is introduction. It sets the context. Chapter 2 is summary. Chapter 3 and 4 deal with Karma Yoga and Chitta Shuddhi. Chapter 5 and 6 deal with Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. Chapter 6 also deals with clarity of thought or Samabuddhi. Chapter 5 and 6 also deals with Vividisha Sannyasa, which leads to Avidya Nivriti and Vidyananda Prapti. Actually, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, all together, a person who practices all of these together is a Vividisha Sannyasa. Chapter 7 to 12 deals with Bhakti or absolute devotion. immersion or samadhi, atma tripti, atma rathi, atma santushti, tattva jnana and aparoksha jnana. That is chapter 7 to 12. Chapter 13 also specifically deals with tattva jnana. Chapter 14 deals with Jivan Mukti. And chapter 15 deals with Paravairagya or dispassion. Chapter 16 deals with Samadhi Abhyasa and Vidvat Sannyasa. Chapter 17 deals with Satvika Shraddha. And chapter 18, of course, is the summary after Bhagavad Gita. So this is what we are now going to embark on. So one of the crucial interesting things that come about, that we can note here is that unlike most books, there are most books, unlike most text, the Bhagavad Gita is not linear. We just saw that, okay? It just goes up and down. Some ideas are scattered over several chapters. And some ideas are constantly repeated again and again in different contexts sometime, in the same context sometime. And a few ideas, they presuppose that we have some knowledge which that idea is referring to. Either we have got that knowledge in the Bhagavad Gita itself, or we could have got that knowledge somewhere else. But there is no point that where Bhagavad Gita refers to something which Bhagavad Gita is not talked about. It does not presuppose anything that it has already not covered. So some ideas are scattered all over, some ideas are repeated, some ideas assume that you already know something else. So this is the kind of, it is pretty dynamic. So it is very important for us as sadhakas, as seekers, to pay complete attention, number one. And not only pay complete attention, it is important to revise. We have to go back and read it again. That is when we will be able to connect. Otherwise, if we just do it once, it will be all over the place. To some it may make sense, to some it may not make sense. To some it may make sense sometime, but not all the time. So it is very, very important, one, to be attentive, to immerse, like we said, like the Federer-Nadal exercise, and two, to go back and do it again. The word usage in Bhagavad Gita is also contextual. For example, Sankhya can be used to refer to analysis, or it can be used to refer to Upanishads. So when it is referring to Upanishad, if you think analysis, you'll get a wrong meaning. That is why, remember, when I started off, we said, let's create a Sanskrit-English dictionary. If we can create that dictionary and follow it, it will be very useful. That will then help you ensure that we relate to the right context at the right time. Another example is Atma. Atma can either mean mind, intellect, or it can mean soul. Sometimes the soul is referred to as Atma, sometimes the soul is referred to as Purusha. Purusha can mean soul, or Purusha can also mean man, person, human being. So there is intermixing in terms of the usage of words, in terms of what they mean. It is important to understand and know that. Another interesting exercise that we can do is after completion of all the 18 chapters, is to read it thematically. See, because I said it doesn't follow a linear thought process, it is all over the place. It will be very interesting once we finish to say, let's take, one of the thematic concepts that we talked about. For example, Vidvat Sannyasa, and see which are the verses that refer to Vidvat Sannyasa. Let us take Satvika Shraddha and see which are the verses that refer to Satvika Shraddha. So that will be a very, very interesting example to do once we complete all 18 chapters. The first exercise, if you remember, was to see that chapter 2, the verses of chapter 2, what are the elaborations of those in the future of Bhagavad Gita. That is the first exercise that we talked about. So essentially, like I said earlier, chapter 2 has the seed for whatever is going to come in the future. For example, the seed for Karma Yoga, which we are going to start today, verse 2.48, Yogas takuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. That is the seed, samatvam yoga uchyate, seed to Karma Yoga. The seed for Vividisha Sannyasa is vihaya kamanyas sarvan pummamscharati nisparaha nirmamo nirahankaraha sashantimadi gacchati. This is verse 71 of chapter 2, Vividesha Sannyasa. The seed for bhakti. This is often missed because while Karma Yoga, Vividesha Sannyasa, Sthita Pragya, there are multiple verses that touch upon this in chapter 2. Bhakti, there is only one verse. And then there are 7 to 12, 5 chapters or 6 chapters later on. The seed for bhakti, 61, verse 61. Tani sarvani samyamya yukta asita matparaha vasehi yasendriyani tasya pragya pratishtita matparaha, devoted in me. Mind completely in me. That part. Another crucial part or point about the Bhagavad Gita that we must keep in context, remember as we go about from chapter 3 onwards, is the definition of sannyasa. Very interesting. And the 2 types of sannyasa. Okay. Sannyasa is defined as, of course, it is renunciation. One aspect of sannyasa is renunciation. But sannyasa is immersion in a total, complete, non-stop, dedicated pursuit. And when you do that, you renounce something else that you would have otherwise done. That is the definition of sannyasa. And the 2 types of sannyasa are Vividesha sannyasa and Vidvat sannyasa. Vividesha sannyasa pertains to the seeker stage who has a desire for knowing, the sadhaka avastha. The sadhaka is focused on Shravana and Manana and Nididhyasana. When you are doing these 3, that means that person is a Vividesha sannyasi. And Vidvat sannyasa is the knower stage, Siddha avastha, person who already knows. And the Siddha is focused on Samadhi abhyasa. These are things that we should keep in mind. Now, let's move forward. A clear instruction that Bhagavan gives to Arjuna in chapter 2 is that he should perform Karma Yoga. In fact, Bhagavan tells Arjuna that you are only eligible for Karma Yoga. Verse 31, he says, Dharmyadi yuddha chreyonyat, which means for a soldier, nothing is higher than a righteous war. Dharmyadhi, for dharma, yuddha chreyonyat. Shreya, what is Shreya? This righteous war for a soldier. Verse 47, he talks about karmanyevadhikaraste. Your eligibility is only in action. Verse 48, yogastat kuru karmani. Perform your action steadfast in yoga. So again and again and again, Arjuna, please perform your karma yoga. Arjuna, please perform your karma yoga. That is what he says. And while he is encouraging, while he is urging Arjuna to do that multiple times, at the same time, he also keeps praising the state of being stable in wisdom. That's Sthita Pragya. So in verse 46, he says, Tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanyasya vijanatah. So for such person, a person who has attained stability in wisdom, whatever is in the Vedas and more than that is available. What a big glorious statement. Then he says in verse 55, he says, Atman yevatmana tushtaha, satisfied in self, only in the self. That is the person who has attained, who has steady wisdom. And verse 72, Esha Brahmi Sthiti Partha. That state of Brahman, having obtained that, you get Brahma Nirvana Mrichati. So, one time he is telling Arjuna, do Karma Yoga. The other side he is telling, oh, this is so beautiful. The state of being stable in wisdom. That is the ultimate. So, asking Arjuna to perform Karma Yoga while all the time glorifying the state of Sthita Pragya. It's like once my son came to me very angrily, Daddy, please stop asking me to study. And I was like, what's wrong with him? And I said, no, beta, you have your exam coming up, so you got to study. You have to, put in that effort because your exams are coming up. His rebuttal shut me up. He said, if I have to study, why do you keep constantly reminiscing about our last vacation, the holiday that we had, all the wonderful times that we had? You keep talking about that and my mind is going there. I'm not able to focus on study. It's like Krishna saying, glorifying, praising Sthita Pragya, the state of absolute steadfast wisdom, and telling Arjuna, do Karma Yoga. So that leads to Arjuna asking his second question. With that, we will start chapter 3.
Om Paramatmane Namaha. Atha Tritiyodhyayah Karma Yogaha. Arjuna Uvacha.
Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha. Atha Tritiyodhyayah Karma Yogaha. Arjuna Uvacha.
Jayasi Chet Karmanaste.
Jayasi Chet Karmanaste.
Mata Buddhir Janardana.
Mata Buddhir Janardana.
Tatkim Karmani Gore Mam.
Tatkim Karmani Ghore Mam.
Niyojayasi Keshava.
Niyojayasi Keshava.
Arjuna Uvacha. Jayasi Chet Karmanaste. Mata Buddhir Janardana. Tatkim Karmani Gore Mam. Niyojayasi Keshava.
Janardana, one more captivating name for Sri Krishna. Another exercise that we can do is we can make a list of all the names that either Arjuna or Sanjay use for Sri Krishna. There's these beautiful names of Sri Krishna, each one of them very relevant to the context, each one of them with great meaning throughout the Bhagavad Gita. So Janardana, Jana means a person, Ardh means to seek, beseech, to ask. Janardana implies one to whom we place our request, one to whom we ask. So Arjuna uses Janardana because he is asking Sri Krishna. So, O Janardana, he says, Chet. Chet means if. If in your considered opinion, te mata, in your considered opinion, in your thought, te mata. Mata means thought. In this context, considered opinion. Buddhir jayasi. Wisdom is glorious, more glorious, greater. Wisdom is greater. Karmanaha, then action. Tatkim, then why? Karmani ghore, in action which is terrible. Karmani in action, ghore is terrible action. Niyojayasi mam, you engage me, O Keshava. So you have slayed demons, Keshava. Now this other use in the same verse, two names for Krishna. Keshava. Keshava means slayer of demon, Keshi. Krishna slayed the demon Keshi. Or Keshava also means one who has beautiful long hair. So, O Krishna, you have slayed demons. You know how ghore, how terrible that action is. O Janardana, please tell me, if your considered opinion, if your thought is that wisdom is greater than, more glorious than action, why are you again and again encouraging me, goading me to do this terrible action, O Kesava? And then he continues.
Vyamishreneva Vakyena.
Vyamishreneva Vakyena.
Buddhim Mohayasiva Me.
Buddhim Mohayasiva Me.
Tadekam Vada Nishchitya.
Tadekam Vada Nishchitya.
Yena Shreyoham Apnuyam.
Yena Shreyoham Apnuyam.
Vyamishreneva Vakyena. Buddhim Mohayasiva Me. Tadekam Vada Nishchitya. Yena Shreyoham Apnuyam.
So, Eva, as it is what? Vakyena, with your speech. With what kind of a speech? Vamishrena. Vamishrena means perplexing. Mohayasiva. Mohayasiva means you confuse. Implied is you confuse. Me, which is my, buddhim, understanding. As it is with your perplexing, with this perplexing speech, you confuse my understanding. tad vada or vada tad. Tell that ekam one. Tell me that one by which, yena, by which, aham I, nishchitya. Nishchitya means for certain. Apnuyam, may attain. What? Shreyo. What is good? The highest. So therefore, Bhagavan, tell me the one way, the single one way by which I for certain may attain the highest. As it is, you are confusing me with your perplexing speech. So please just tell me that one thing. Don't give me this karma and sthita pragya, karma, sthita pragya. Tell me one by which I may, following which I may attain the highest. Sri Bhagavanu Vacha.
Sri Bhagavanu Vacha.
Sri Bhagavanu Vacha.
Lokesmin dvividha nishta.
Lokesmin dvividha nishta.
Pura prokta maya nagha.
Pura prokta maya nagha.
Jnana yogena sankhyanam.
Jnana yogena sankhyanam.
Karma yogena yoginam.
Karma yogena yoginam.
Sri Bhagavanu Vacha. Lokesmin dvividha nishta. Pura prokta maya nagha. Jnana yogena sankhyanam. Karma yogena yoginam.
Pura prokta maya. So Bhagavan says, as previously mentioned by me. Pura previously, prokta said, I have mentioned maya by me. Arjuna seems like you have forgotten. I have already said this. And when did Bhagavan say this? Remember Dehali Deepagyana, verse 39. Esha te bihita sankhye buddhir yoge trimam shrinu. So that Sankhya, Buddhi. What has been taught to you till now pertains to Sankhya. Now listen, Arjuna, to the wisdom concerning yoga. So I have already enumerated to you. Pura prokta maya. In this world, asmin loke, a world in which there are people with varying abilities, with various eligibility levels. One who has already attained a pure heart. One whose impurities of the mind and intellect have been completely removed. And the other, a class where they are still working on removing those impurities. There may be a third class who neither have their impurities been removed, nor are they working on it. They are not relevant here. Okay, we don't have to talk about them. But these two that are relevant here, either those who have completely pure heart, which means they have attained that level of samadhi, or those who are still working on it, which means what? They are indulging in karma yoga. There is twofold path for such. Twofold path has been defined so that the appropriate person may choose the appropriate path. Dvivida nishtha, twofold path. And when this twofold path is there, one can abide in that path. And who will abide in which path? Jnana yogena sankhyanam. Sankhyanam means of the people, of the Sankhyans, or of the people who have Sankhya, who already have that Sankhya, who already have the steady wisdom. That is, they have Atma Vidya and Swadharma Vidya. For those people, Jnana yogena, take the path of wisdom, abide by the path of wisdom, by the wisdom that you already possess. Go deeper, well deeper. We just saw that entire step, the spiritual path. So you already have the wisdom. Now get deeper into that wisdom. Karma yogena yoginam. Yoginam are those people who are not yet fully purified in their mind and intellect, not yet fully stable in their wisdom. For them, take or abide by the path of karma yoga, by the path of action. So Arjuna's question also, this is Bhagwan's guidance. And obviously he's telling Arjuna multiple times. That is why his instruction to Arjuna, while he has glorified the state of Sthita Prajna, while he has glorified the state of steady wisdom, he told Arjuna to do Karma Yoga. Why? Because Arjuna still needs to remove some of those impurities. And Arjuna's question also seems to imply, Arjuna knows that he has that problem of delusion. There are still impurities. But he's implying, can I bypass it? Can I take a shortcut? Because, I'm enamored by this praise of the Sthita Prajna. That is why I asked you, Sthita Pragyascha ka bhasha. I'm so enamored by that praise, by that glorifying. You are glorifying. So can I just take a shortcut? Can I just directly go to being a Sthita Prajna? How do I do that? So Bhagavan answers that in the next verse.
Na karmana manarambhan
Na karmana manarambhan
naishkarmyam purushoshnute
naishkarmyam purushoshnute
nacha sanyasana deva
nacha sanyasana deva
siddhim samadhi gacchati
siddhim samadhi gacchati
na karmana manarambhan naishkarmyam purushoshnute nacha sanyasana deva siddhim samadhi gacchati.
So na is not what? Not anarambhan, not by non-performance, not by another use of two negatives, not by non-performance. Of what? Karmanam, of actions. In this sense, actions means duty. So not by non-performance of action, Purusha, that person, Ashnute means reaches. Reaches what? Naishkarmyam, the state of total absorption. Naishkarmyam actually means actionless. And a person who is actionless and who is not tamasic, but is actionless, is a person who has reached that state of total absorption. Nacha, cha is and, na, not. Sanyasana deva, only from renunciation, only through renunciation, gacchati attains siddhim samadhi, perfection in samadhi. So not by non-performance of duty does a person reach the state of total absorption or actionlessness, and nor by mere renunciation of action does the person attain perfection in samadhi. So karmanam, there are two very important words here. Karmanam, naishkarmyam. Naishkarmyam. Karmanam means what has been specified as niyata karma. Niyata karma is something which, for me, niyata karma is what I ought to do. There is no excuse. I can't create an excuse for not doing it. Something that I ought to do. A young mother ought to feed her child. There is no excuse for a young mother not to feed her child. A warrior has to fight the battle. Sitting in the middle, Senayor Ubayor Madhye, let's go away, Krishna. No, you ought to fight. You're in the middle of the battlefield. There is a reason why you're there. A soldier has to fight. So what you ought to do is niyata karma. That karmanam is being referred to here. And that depends on your role, depends on the position, depends on the stage in your life. Each one of us has niyata karma. And that we have to do. Naishkarmyam, a person who has reached that state of total absorption, as if actionless. He appears actionless, but he's not actionless, or she is not actionless. She has a contemplative nature. She is antarmukha. Antarmukha means introverted, as against bahirmukha, which is extroverted. Let's read the next verse to get the full context.
Nahi kaschit shanamapi
Nahi kaschit shanamapi
jatu tishtatya karma krita
jatu tishtatya karma krita
karyate yavashak karma
karyate hyavashat karma
sarva prakriti jair gunaihi
sarva prakriti jair gunaihi
nahi kaschit kshanamapi jatu tishtatya karma krita karyate hyavashak karma sarva prakriti jairgunaihi.
Again, rewording or jumbling up so that we make sense of the sentence in English. He is indeed. Indeed, na not. Api is even. Kaschit, anyone. Jatu, certainly. Tishtati. Tishtati is remain.
Tishtati, yeah.
Tishtatya karma krita. There is akarma krita. Tishtati, remain. Akarma krita. Akarma krita is without performing action. So, indeed, nahi kaschit kshanamapi jatu tishtatya karma krita. So, na is not, he indeed, kaschit, anyone, kshanam, at any moment, api, even, jatu, certainly, tishtati, remains, akarma krita, without performing action. So, indeed, not even anyone can certainly remain without performing action even for a moment. Why? Why? Because he means for, sarva, all, everyone, karyate is made, karma, to act, avasha, helplessly. And why? Gunaihi, by the qualities, prakriti, which are born out of one's inherent nature. Everyone is made to act helplessly by the qualities born out of nature. So, indeed, not anyone can certainly remain without performing action, even for a moment, because everyone is made to act helplessly by the qualities of my own nature. I am forced to act. So, naishkarmyam, which is what? Absorption state, versus yavashaha karma, helpless action state. The state of absorption and the state of helpless action. So Bhagavan is saying that a person who has reached that state of total actionlessness, that contemplative nature, that person compared to another person who is forced to act. So you cannot reach that state of complete actionlessness without performing action, simply because every human being, every creation is by nature tuned towards action. That is what Bhagavan has conveyed in these two verses. So there was this Mahatma who was living in a temple. The temple was run by a trust, and the trust had employed a pujari and a manager to look after the temple. Then this Mahatma was there. So the manager requested the pujari, this poor Mahatma is there, very noble soul, please take care of the Mahatma. So essentially he was provided food and a place to sleep, a room or a place to sleep. One day the managing trustee came there and, yeah, who is this fellow who's lounging around there? So the manager said, sir, he's a Mahatma. The trustee said, what does he do? Nothing much, the manager said. He just sits there in contemplation, as if in contemplation. Trustee says, why is he here? Does he live here? The manager says, yes, sir, he lives here. We also provide him food, by the way. Not only does he live here, we provide him with food. The trustee says he does nothing, and you give him food and you give him a place to stay, accommodation. What is this going on here? No, who is this responsible for running this temple? The manager says, well, sir, once in a while he cleans a little, he helps, if we need that. Sometimes he cooks, but that's about it. The trustee says, sorry, you can't do that. You can't take care of this person for doing nothing. The manager says, okay, sir, and the Mahatma is sitting there hearing everything, but keeping to himself all the time. The manager says, sir, will you be able to sit next to him for one day? And if you're able to sit next to him for one day, we will ask him to leave. So the trustee says, of course I can. That's not a big deal. Sunday, let Sunday come. I'll have free time. I will come and sit next to him for a day. That's no big deal. So the next Sunday, he comes there and he sits next to the Mahatma. 15 minutes pass. 15 minutes later, he looks at the ceiling and he tells the manager, see, there are cobwebs in the ceiling. And another 15 minutes, he says, can I have some water? After another 30 minutes, he says, can I have a chair? And after another hour, he says, you know what, I completely forgot. I had to go to my son's school. Today's parent-teacher meeting. And he gets up and goes. So the Mahatma is in the state of absorption. The trustee is in the state of helpless action. And we see this all around us. Even if you think that you are not going to act, you would be forced by your own nature. And not only that, only through action can you reach that state of actionlessness. The state of actionlessness is not possible to reach without action. Mastery of the mind and intellect is not a conquest. In steady wisdom, the mind is quietened by itself. It happens on its own. The state of the Sthita Pragya, it can't obtain by declaring, okay, from tomorrow onwards, I'm going to be Sthita Pragya. Or it can't be forced revolution. You have to be, me telling my family, my son, somebody, you have to be Sthita Pragya from tomorrow. It doesn't work like that. It is a slow flowering process. It's not a revolution, it's an evolution. And that evolution happens through effort. You can't do it without effort. The effort comes from Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga is what leads to it. With that, we will close today's satsang.
Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.
Thank you. Hari Om. Let's spend a few moments. Anyone has any questions, thought, comments?
I have not a question but a comment. Just like Bhagavan presented chapter 2 summary of the whole Gita, you have presented today the whole structure for the whole text. Yeah. So I find it very, very nice. Yeah. I think many people here are engineers and they understand things only by the structure. So thanks for presenting it. And I don't believe you are not an engineer, because only an engineer can structure things in this way. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Thank you, Deepak. No, I'm not an engineer, but yeah, I did design my house. So sometimes you kind of get intuitively, you get access to some technical knowledge that you otherwise have not studied or learned. So that's also a beautiful experience.
Yeah, I think that is what you meant by Paroksha Gyan and Aparoksha Gyan, right?
True. Yeah.
I just want to add to what Deepak said. Now knowing all the chapters and what is covered in what chapter is very useful. I think that was really nice to know what's coming and how we'll be going in depth into each of those concepts. So I think it was a great session today.
Thank you. And you know what? I may not be 100% accurate. Huh? So every time you go through it, you say, "Oh my God, this you forgot. I have to put this here."
Yeah.
So yeah, I've done my best in terms of culling that, but it may not be complete. So,
but at least it's there for us to refer. I think that kind of opens the book for us. Otherwise, it was all, what is this chapter about? You get to know much later. So that way, it's nice.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, some of those exercises that I talked about, they are very interesting. You have time, you should do that.
Yes,
Yeah.
sure.
So which verse of chapter 2 refers to which concept? That's a nice exercise. Sri Krishna's name, some of those names are beautiful. So mapping those. If you do, please share. If any one of you do, please share with all of us. That will be interesting. Okay, otherwise we can take leave and meet on next Saturday. Thank you all. Hari Om. See you next Saturday. Hari Om.